like to call to order the monthly SAP committee meeting. And I'd like to start with introduction. And let's just start in the audience.
Hi, I'm Matt Johnson, SAP Delivery Executive.
Lindsay Carter, Program Administrator for SAP.
Hi, Tom Novell with SAP.
Rose Foley, Assembly Budget Analyst.
Mike Chadwick, Internal Audit.
Lynn Ketchy, SAP Quality Assurance Program Manager.
Paul Byrne, Deputy Business Manager.
Sherry Easley, Legislative Aide for Eastley.
Ethan Burkholz.
Susie Ansley Green.
Elder Gray Jackson.
Good training.
Okay, progress report. Alden Stern, you have the floor.
Thank you. And actually, so I want to make sure we have plenty of time to go over good news. So I'm actually going to ask.
Start with the good news first.
We are. I want to have Lynn do this. So Lynn Ketchy, just a little bit of background here, since it's been a while since you may have seen her. We have SAP has an entity that is kind of a separate entity that does more audits of how well projects are going, status updates, and so forth. Lynn has been here since 2011 or 12, doing a variety of audits, a lot of them not so good, but she's an unbiased third party for them to be able to basically come in and look at the project status. And she did one for us in July that was presented in August and we released in late September, which was kind of an update at this point. So she's basically come back. This is gate check number 2. It's kind of like you check the project status as you're going along. She was here in January and then came back in March to finalize this particular gate check, which basically covers us through the blueprint closure process, basically up through that particular time period. And what she's going to do is she's going to go through a nice PowerPoint presentation here to just kind of show you where we are in the project from her perspective, as well as what she's comparable to other projects that they've had. So how are we doing now compared to what they've seen out there in all the SAP projects that have been performed? So we have a good benchmark to kind of compare how well we're doing.
San Diego, one of the ones you're going to compare us to, because I was interested in this how San Diego.
They're probably lumped. She has a group of 400, so they're probably one of those. We won't be specifically targeting an individual municipality or client out there, but their information has been thrown into the compilation of their entire database and so forth.
So as your top or chief fiscal officer. No, we not did so.
And you actually live in San Diego.
Mary Lewis.
Yes, we had a good talk with her.
Good.
So this
I'm
is
very familiar with that account.
But the key part here is Lynn has been here from the beginning, not just the beginning of January last year, but from the very beginning of the process of the project, years and years ago. And it really has a great perspective of where we were and also where we are right now and where she sees us going forward. So I think it's a great opportunity to be able to ask her questions, and we obviously will have some additional ones of these as we progress through the project. But this one here is really kind of giving a status update on where the project is, kind of like the blueprint closure thing. And I thought we'd start with her. That gives plenty of time to go through her presentation, have you ask any questions, and then at the very end I can certainly give you some status updates on some of the things that we're working on and where we are currently. But Lynn, hand it over to you.
You guys have any questions to start with? No? Other than City of San Diego, right?
Can somebody dim the lights a little bit so we can see the screen better?
You can stand up there if you
Okay.
like.
You have
Too
sunglasses.
short.
Better, thank you.
All right, so as Alden said, this represents the results of gate check number 2. And there were actually 2 different interview times on here. And what I'm going to go over is I'm going to go over some First, I'm going to start with just like general conditions, like when the review was conducted, what's included in it. And then I want to go over the risk indicators, which you guys have already seen from prior reviews. So you've seen those. And then I'm going to go through this cross-industry general indicator, so it gives you an idea of kind of what I compare to, right? Because I've been doing quality assurance since 2011, and before that, I've worked on a lot of SAP projects, so I've seen a lot of patterns, and I've seen patterns here. And I'm really very, very attuned into trying to mitigate the risks for many of those patterns repeating themselves. And then I want to go over do you understand that? Okay, so, and then I want to go over the overall scorecard, where the project is very high level, and then I'll break it down some more. And then I want to go over what I call like significant risks. So with that, the report, this is gate check 2, And I first came January 19th to the 22nd, and then I came back the 22nd to the 24th. So that's when I'm actually interviewing people. But I'm also looking at documentation. So you guys have the new SharePoint site now, and you have Solution Manager, and I have access, and I actually go in, and I actually personally audited those documents, and there are a lot of documents. And the report is point in time. So in your head, keep thinking completion of the blueprint phase, because there will have been things that have been addressed as part of blueprint closure, or it's the beginning of realization phase, right? But this is the point in time when the review took place, and there's probably some things on here that are still getting worked on, they're works in progress. And the information was from the different people that I interviewed, so there was like about 70 people, and then I re-interviewed some of them on the second round, and then all the documentation, and all the names are listed in the detail report with the documentation that I've actually looked at. So that's my source of information. And then the report revolves around project management, people, processes, and technology. So those are the standard areas that we measure on. Got it? Okay. Back in like July of 2012, when I was here, we did the full review, and there's like 26 different KPIs. So I mean, like, you can go back and see how this project has changed over the years. So the risk indicator, the green is low, which means it's either okay, or there's maybe a little risk in there that I really like watched. And the way you can tell the difference is if it just says continue with current approach, then everything is like perfectly fine. But if there's a little bit, be careful about this or that, then that would be an actual low risk. And the medium is kind of like the car where it's swerving. It's like you need to be careful on the medium risk, because depending upon skill levels, experience, and just the circumstances of the project, it may be okay, but it may not be okay. So the mediums are to be watched, because we never want them to go into the red, which is a high risk, and that has the significant likelihood of causing or contributing to a negative outcome during the implementation or after go live. And those are the ones that you really have to correct, the reds. And the yellows, you have to really manage and mitigate those so that they never turn into the red. Okay, so and this is, you guys have any questions yet?
No, I don't see
Okay.
anybody.
No? Okay. So,
thank you.
anyhow, these are the cross-industry, these are general indicators to help you understand project health. And where these came from is the SAP Quality Assurance Group. We are an independent outside group. So I'm not in sales and I'm not in delivery. And we do reviews on our own projects, on customer projects, and on partner projects. So it's pretty much across the board. And when we do the review, there's standard measurements that we use, and then we record those into a database. And that's what this is the result of. So these are the high or medium risk areas on projects. So like 80% of the projects are going to have some sort of an HR issue, like leadership, insufficient resources, unclear roles. And at the Muni, they've had all three of those before at one time. Right now, this is trending very positive. Time management, the same thing. There's been times here when there was no schedule, they would have hit that one straight on, right? But for the blueprint phase, they actually had a schedule, and they actually used the schedule. For realization, they're putting the schedule together right now. Testing management, in the past, they weren't focused on the business scenarios, and they didn't have sufficient time and resources. Right now, at the end of the blueprint phase, they completed the testing strategy, and it has been approved, and they have end-to-end business processes, which are cross-functional, which is super strong. That's like the best, okay? And I have checked, and I have been told that those cross-functional business processes will support testing and training, which takes you over to 4, the integration management. So they had a phase at the end of the blueprint to validate the integration, which is, again, that's like a major kudo, because a lot of projects, they don't have the time, or they don't know how to do it. But the team here is very, very strong, because they've been through it so many times now. They know how to do this. And then the scope management is, they were fine, so that's all defined. So this is like overall scorecard. Overall, the project risk is still medium, because there are some areas that need some attention. And I'm a hard grader, okay? So I would never make this a low risk if there was something that could hurt or damage the project. So if I were a social worker, this project is my child, and that's how I view it. So I am very passionate about getting this project live in the safest way possible. So you can see, like I told you, the HR management, you got strong leadership, strong project team, you're backfilling for realization, time management, you had a schedule, and you had adequate time for that blueprint validation, which is a first. And testing, you've got the testing strategy created, you've got your end-to-end business processes. Integration management, you've got those end-to-end business process flows, which I scrutinize very heavily. And those they've been validated, and you've got the approved blueprint design documents. So this is kind of why it's still in a medium risk, because you can see, we've got some, scheduling, resourcing, integration. I'm going to go through those, and then functionality status. I'm going to cover why that's red, and then you can see how many of the areas are really trending positive right now. So the goal is to keep it like this. So these are the positives, and I go over the positives because I need to reinforce what's good so that the project continues to do what is good. Because if I don't call it out, you may not appreciate it, right? And they'll slip. So they recognize and they realize the executive leadership support. So they've got really strong leadership support on the project team, and they know it. And it's like I used to hear things like, doesn't the 8th floor understand? And now I hear the 8th floor, they're hearing us, and they're engaged and they're active on the project. So that's a positive. And the leadership is coming together, and you've got a very experienced project team. And that's from the Muni side and from the SAP, all the consultants. Because the municipality employees, they've been through this multiple years now, right? So a lot of them are really strong. There's some areas where there's new people, but at time, they really dug in, and they deserve special recognition of time work stream. The foundation is there, so the blueprints were described as of good quality. So if you guys had a bell curve, the blueprint should be falling like in a really good bell, and maybe even a little bit over to the more positive side, because they understand what was necessary to have a good blueprint, because they didn't have it in the past. They've never had this. This is the first time it's ever really been approved. They had blueprints that were high level, but they were not thorough and complete. They couldn't build on it. And that's one of the things that the project team is so pleased about, is because they have the foundation to go forward. And they also were able to see the big picture. So at the end, they had the integration sessions. And that was like probably a first for some of them to actually see how all of this came together. And that's another positive. And then they've got some improved project communication, which has always been a really negative, hard part of this project, is the communication. So right now, they got the SharePoint, so they can get all the documents up there, and they've got the Skype, and they've got a management plan. There's still more work in this area, but it is trending towards it has improved, okay? They were actually, some of them were reluctant to tell me that they thought it had improved. So I would say, how is communication? And it would be like, well, it's a little better. It's like, come on, they didn't want to just give it up, So, okay, data migration is an area, the decision for the inception to date, that's been made, so that's good. The recommendation in the report is make sure that sticks and that people don't go backwards on it. And then in data migration, that work stream wasn't scoped as part of the blueprint. And during the QA review in January 2015, there were issues about the clarity of what data objects are being converted and what is the mapping. And then they were using Excel files to download the data from the source systems, and it was very, very manual intensive. And the concern here is that the deep dive analysis into data migration, it hasn't occurred yet, right? So where it was before the project paused, that's where it is still, right? So they're planning to do a data assessment to get a better understanding of the data, and that's really important, and it needs to happen early in the realization phase so they can scope it and plan it and estimate it. Because part of the issue here is we don't really have the facts. I mean, like, I've been around this project since July 2012, and I know data migration has always been a problem, and I know that inception to date was a problem. But I really don't have enough facts around this data. I know that there's a problem getting the data out of PeopleSoft, but I don't have the facts, you know. So I think that data assessment is important, but this one could go to red really, really quick if this deep dive doesn't happen early, because in a way it's a little bit behind already right now. And then FERC consulting, there's a FERC consultant on the project that's going to be replaced, and part of his work was going to be assigned to an FI consultant. And the concern here is that it's really hard to find the FERC expertise, and it's a real niche subject area. So they have to make sure that they fill that skill set. So that's what's going on there. And the other thing here is, like, to date, the FERC flow of costs, they haven't been able to actually trace it yet, so they didn't have enough data to run it, to be able to balance their FERC account to their natural chart of accounts. So one's very important. And then communication, the level 1 and level 2 management, they need to have some internal information, like, not internal information, they need to have meetings to share internal information about the project. And there's a new project manager now, and he can facilitate those internal meetings for them.
I have a question.
Sure.
Can you tell me again, or tell us again, the issue with the FERC accounts and general accounts?
Yeah, the issue,
Just for clarity for me.
the issue is that they have not ever really traced the FERC numbers back to the natural chart of accounts. They haven't balanced it because they didn't have enough data when the project, you know, when they were in testing before. And so they still need to do this. And
Thank you.
And then this is the critical area. So this was where that functionality was read on the scorecard, and the reason is because there are existing legacy systems, so like Maximo, they're out there, right? And the SAP project, they were scoped to estimate, you know, that they're going to be building the interfaces for the data going out, but the systems outside, like Maximo, they have to build the interfaces coming in so the data can get shared back and forth. And the interfaces from the municipality systems into the SAP system, those have not been scoped or estimated, and they believe that that work would exceed the capacity of the existing IT staff. And so this one's really important because you can see there's 34 inbound interfaces that have to be built on those existing municipality systems to pass the data. And then there's interfaces coming from SAP outwards, like say to Maximo. And if the data or something is different, then Maximo may need to make a change with the outside system. And so this needs to be scoped because the system cannot go live without these interfaces being built. The only way it could go live is somebody would have to manually sit there and key it in, which would be an inefficiency and against the charter, right? Because you're supposed to build efficiencies in. So that one's really important. And then the other one is the reporting. So the Muni staff, they still haven't seen the standard business content in the SAP Business Warehouse, which is that's the data warehousing tool. And they haven't seen the reporting in the SAP, like the transactional system. And they need to see that so they can understand what they actually have in terms of standard reports. Because right now they really don't know. And on the development list is what we call the RICE list, the workflow, reports, interfaces, conversions, enhancements, and forms. There's 74 reports, and the municipality employees are concerned because there were reports that were previously on the list funding on the SAP project is limited in the area of reporting. So, you know, non-project personnel are gonna have to help build those reports. So this is an area of concern as well. And that is it. You guys have questions?
Thank you.
now?
Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Trainee?
Please, okay.
So who's putting the resources towards fixing these problems?
So I'll kind of hit these a little bit in the order that we have up here. So as far as the interfaces go, there are weekly meetings now between the consulting PMO staff along with the IT staff, Zoll staff, to be able to try to wrap their hands around this big picture right here and try to get an idea. I think they're also involving the CIOs from both utilities because several of these interfaces come from them as well to be able to do that. As Lynn mentioned, there's a belief that we may not have enough internal capacity to be able to do all these. So I don't want to necessarily speak for the IT department, but I know that they're looking at a variety of ways of maybe bringing in some consulting staff on their own to help facilitate that, as well as trying to use, as I mentioned, utilities to be able to do that. So they are having meetings. It is a high priority on their radar, so to speak. And it is something that is certainly going to be acted upon and at least identified here relatively soon as far as what the resource need is to accomplish that. As far as the reports aspect, that has been a long-standing concern. We are trying to get SAP resources to show the standard reports, hold workshops here so we can identify what the standard reports are and what the fields are in those particular reports. That'll go a long way to determining on the RICEP list here. There's people believing that there are reports they may need to have custom created, but they haven't seen the standard reports. So if the standard report has all that functionality, that will potentially reduce some of the additional reports that might have to be written. In addition to that area, we are certainly trying to staff up that functional stream to start the custom reporting and the BW that goes along with that to be able to do that particular area. So we're trying to address these. As Lynn mentioned, this is a point in time, and we're certainly at a point right now where these areas have to be addressed, and we're trying to get our arms around what we need to do on that. I'll speak to just one back here on data migration, which is the data conversion aspect, because I know that's been a high priority as well. They're looking at bringing a company in with their resources to do an analysis here in the next week or two of our data, and then after a couple of weeks of that analysis, then we'll have a better idea of what we have currently in PeopleSoft, how we use it, and then a strategy can be developed to determine how we're going to go forward in the project to look at that data and cleanse it and figure out how we need to move it. So that particular one we're looking at in the next week or two to begin at least scoping out what our potential concerns might be in that particular area.
Will there be another appropriation for that, or is that wrapped in?
That is wrapped into the data conversion was one of the work streams that was in the package that was put forward. To
The SAP
Assembly.
contract.
Yes,
Thank you.
that's incorporated in the SAP contract.
Anything else?
On those particular things, just to kind of, I'll give you some other project status updates as well, but I want to, if you have any other issues or questions with Lynn's report here and so forth. I think what you're hearing here overall, if I might summarize, is that from what you've seen in the past to where we are now have been substantial movement.
You are trending better. You're definitely trending better.
Lynn is always reserved.
I'm very
but,
reserved and cautious, so we're just doing better.
She's very happy with the executive leadership, specifically the mayor, and the way that we've taken control and been a change champion. I think there's a lot of, the detail report talks about that in a lot more detail and so forth, and that has proliferated throughout the entire organization. People see that and they respect that, and that, I think, is what's caused a change in attitude from many of the employees going forward. With that being said, there's still a tremendous amount of work that needs to be done, and a tremendous amount of internal resources are going to have to be allocated for that. So where we are currently, blueprint closure was done. We began the realization phase, which was a 2-week preparation phase, which ends tomorrow. The deliverables on that particular aspect, the prime deliverable is the project schedule. That is what everybody's been looking at, which is what's going to happen the next 53 weeks to be able to be ready to go live. So that deliverable is due tomorrow night at close of business, as that's the end of the 2 weeks. A part of that also, which is important to the municipality, is what is the municipal needs and resources that need to be able, and when they need to be available to be able to do their portions of this project. So that will be detailed out tomorrow in that particular document. There are a couple other deliverables of project governance and program governance and so forth to be able to do that. And then there'll also be an analysis as far as any gaps between what was blueprinted and what was in the scope of work to begin with. So those are kind of deliverables. But effective on Monday is really the realization phase is going to begin. So the functional requirements, diving into them in much greater detail, preparing all that document so that the system can actually be configured. Now remember, we already have a configured system. They have a lot of issues with it, so they're going to be validating just as much as creating from scratch. Is what was there correct? If not correct, change it. If it was correct, I validated that that's what we want. So that project plan that's being put together during the configuration stage is basically going through and validating as well as creating anything new that may have come up through the blueprinting. As you remember, the audit was done last January at 600 and some findings. Those were all taken into consideration during the blueprinting process to make sure those gaps or those issues were addressed. So they know going in that they're going to have to make those changes to the configured system to make those projects and the processes work right and so forth. We have a few additional consultants that they're bringing on to help support in there. We've got some great project governance and PMO resources that have been allocated to the project, building everything up to speed. As I've mentioned before, and I'll mention to you too as well again, we still have to bring the ECM licenses forward to you for, not for funding, but for contractual approval.
Right.
The time management system, the CAVA piece, which would be equivalent to Kronos, that is, in your memory of what those systems are, that has to come forward.
I remember that.
And then additionally, if you remember, we had some components of local resources that were going to be assisting with the communication and training aspects. We set out an ITB for that. We're currently beginning the interview process for finding candidates for some of those positions, and I've been told that those also have to come forward in some piece of paper for you at least to review what companies got what pieces of work and so forth. So just want to kind of put those on your radar as things where none of those are asking for additional allocation of money, but they're basically awarding pieces of the project to be able to.
Right, and we remember, that the appropriation is one thing, and we recognize that you're gonna have to come back to us for contract approval, and not asking for any more money, that's real clear.
But I would expect you to start seeing those, one or two of those things, certainly in May here at the different assembly meetings in May. We are targeting to try to get some of those moved forward. So just for your attention up front to be able to do it, because we have a very tight timeline now, as you know, and I look at it this way, 53 weeks at the end of tomorrow, because it was 55 weeks and we've gone through our first two. So we have a tremendous amount of work. The consultants are here, the municipal staff is ready, and the project plan that is completed tomorrow, everything is driven off of that. So that's kind of the focal document that we have.
Which training?
Although some of our desktops or legacy systems are old, using inefficient Windows.
You always
I saw
ask
when you
this
did
question.
Windows 7. I know.
And you know, that's 19th.
I want to know that when SAP goes live, that person can sit at their computer and access SAP. So I want to make sure we've got all the software and upgrades to computers. Because I don't want somebody to get in the computer and tell us I can't get into SAP. So where are we at on that? And I'll keep asking you until somebody will tell me.
Well, that's an IT responsibility. I do know that money was allocated, and I do know a certain number of machines were purchased either in last fall or the winter to try to replace some of the older ones, plus the machines that had some security issues. I cannot make the commitment to you, Mr. Trainee, that all computers in the municipality are on a version of software that will handle SAP when we go live. And
You would know if Windows 7 will drive SAP, will you? Access it?
that's actually outside of my knowledge.
And just one comment, if I may, because we had a presentation from Sal, the IT director, on the $400,000 capital money that we appropriated, $4 million, I'm sorry. And I believe
I mentioned, I know that there was a portion of that.
Yeah.
But that, I think it was at least 800 or close to 1,000, but
Yeah,
I
that's part of
it
it.
wouldn't necessarily say that all computers have met that requirement.
Wait.
I'm sure we might want to invite IT to join some of this discussion. Because it's unfair for me to ask all that, I understand that, but you're the closest I've got here.
I know, and you ask
So
the
I'd like
question
to have
every
IT.
time.
Yeah, it is unfair. I'm just kidding. But anyway, no, we'll have IT. That's one of
Well,
our.
my job is to get you the system that you can run on that computer and you'll be ready to.
Because I was at a community council meeting last night, Federation meeting, where we had somebody from planning dialing in to the computer network, and it popped up Windows 7. And I thought, that thing's not even compatible, I don't cook with this.
From what I've heard, we still have a large number of machines that could be updated.
Okay, and the mayor just said that they're gonna look into it and get back to us, so that's good. Do you have more to say?
That's the update that I have. I'd be more than happy to field any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor, do you have any comments?
Just very briefly, I'm happy that things are on a positive trajectory. We're looking at a little more than a year to go live. That's very encouraging, and we're committed to making this thing punch through. So the trends are good here. There's difficulties, but this is a complex project under the best of circumstances. The fact that our governance is in a strong position gives me added confidence that we'll be able to work through what comes our way.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know that Zig's on the phone. Is there anybody else on the phone besides Zig? Okay, Mr.
Madam
Trainer?
Chair, I think it started with you taking ownership of this. Unlike the last administration, you actually, when you came in, took ownership of this. You began to champion to make this system work, so appreciate you doing that.
I believe Harry Truman had a sign on his desk indicating where the buck stopped. I know where it stops.
Thank you, Mr. Trainer. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Zig, do you have any comments?
Not at this time.
Okay, I just have a couple of comments. This has been a long, drawn-out project, and everybody knows it started in 2011 when we were here. And I'm just real happy to see that we're on the right track, and this audit is better than the last one. It just makes me really happy. So happy that I have an announcement. This Assembly SAP Review Committee. Mr. Train and I decided that we no longer need this committee. It's sort of redundant because we have an outside contractor who gives us a weekly report, and he also gives us an in-person monthly report. And if we need to get, and
I'm in all those
meetings. And if we need Alden to give us additional information as time goes by, then we can invite him to come to our Budget Finance Committee. So this is the last meeting of the SAP Review Committee, and I'm really pleased with what's happening. Anything else, Mr. Attorney?
No, covered
Okay,
it.
if there are no other comments, we can.